Okay, let's get started, and as people join us, they'll follow with us. So today I'm talking on perimenopause and menopause and supporting your hormonal transitions using things like diet, and also explaining what's going on and why you may be feeling what you're feeling. So let's move to the first slide. And as always, you're welcome to have a copy of the slides. You're welcome to listen back to the recording, of course, and you're welcome to contact me at any time with any questions that don't get answered during today. With any questions that you've got, I'll stop regularly to check to see if any questions have come in, and all you need to do is just write them in the chat box and I'll be able to answer them as we go through. Let's begin. So welcome. I'd like to warmly welcome each of you to my talk today, and thank you again for taking the time to join me this morning, and I look forward to sharing my knowledge with you. I'll just check there's a question there just to make sure that it's okay from that person. Okay, beautiful. I hope you enjoy the information presented today and that you find it very helpful for you. My aims for today's brief talk are to introduce you to some of the reasons why you may be experiencing your symptoms, to explain the multifactorial picture that perimenopause and menopause actually are, to discuss what you ideally could be doing to support your hormonal health and symptoms, to explain why there is no magic pill, and as always, to share how you can continue to have your cake, your coffee, or your chocolate. Perimenopause, meaning around menopause, is a natural progression and transition in a woman's life that involves a gradual change from the ability to conceive to the end of the normal reproductive phase of life. It is a time when the ovaries' production of estrogen and progesterone, which are our two major female hormones, starts to significantly decrease, and it's associated with hormonal changes that can affect many women, psychologically, emotionally, socially, as well as physically. Unfortunately, our society doesn't recognise perimenopause and menopause as being the incredible rite of passage and the honour that they should be given. And I hope that, you know, even through this little talk, you get a better understanding of what's going on in your body, how much can be done to support you, and why it's such a natural part of our life changing and our life transitions. The words. So perimenopause ends a year after the last menstrual period. That day is technically menopause, and the time following that is postmenopause. While all of us, every female, will enter into perimenopause, the timing of the onset, the duration of the transition, and the symptoms that are experienced can markedly differ from woman to woman. No woman is the same at all, even within families. The way your mom experienced it, the way your grandmother experienced it, may be very different to the way you experience it. Most frequently, it occurs in a woman's 40s. Some, however, start in their 30s, especially if there has been a trauma or prolonged stress, and some will start later in their 50s. It lasts an average of 4 to 6 years, but it can be as short as 1 year for perimenopause or longer than 6, even up to 10. Hopefully, though, with treatment, with nutrition, with herbal medicine, etc., it doesn't have to necessarily be as long and certainly not as uncomfortable. Initially, a woman may experience occasional skipped cycles. Later on in the transition, there can be greater menstrual irregularity, with periods of amenorrhea or no periods lasting for over 60 days and eventually up to that 12-month mark. Some women, as we know, experience a medically induced menopause through surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy. And the way they experience it will be very, very different to those women as well that go through it naturally through their normal transitions. The symptoms that may be experienced. The symptoms that are experienced, their intensity and duration vary greatly from woman to woman. Symptoms that may be experienced include, as I said before, the menstrual irregularities. You may find that your bleed is either heavier and more prolonged, or it may be lighter than they used to be. They may be intermixed with episodes of no periods, and then you may have a very heavy one, then you may have a very light one, then you may go a while without one. There's no set pattern. It varies from woman to woman. Night sweats and hot flashes. These tend to be the most commonly reported symptom. However, what is really important to also understand is that a lowered estrogen level does not always cause a hot flush. There are often other factors at play. And as I move through to one of the other slides and through my talk today, I'm hoping that you'll get an understanding of why that is and why the hot flashes that are experienced may be being driven by so much more than just the change in the hormones. A little bit here about them. Essentially, hot flushes are a heat loss mechanism initiated by short-term vasodilation or opening of the capillaries near the skin to allow the blood to cool and lower the body's core temperature. So it's a way of the body trying to offload some heat. Now, perimenopausal and menopausal women do not experience higher core temperatures. What happens is that they have a narrower, a smaller, what we call thermoneutral zone. And there's a loss of this regulation, this narrowing of this zone. And it can occur as a result of chronic stress and accompanying neurotransmitter imbalances. Therefore, stress management during the peri and post-menopause years is vital. I'm actually going to start sharing some things right now before I go any further. We all know that estrogen is one of our greatest friends. It can also be one of our greatest challenges, especially when we have women, when women experience too much estrogen and they get PMS, they get fibroids, etc., etc. Estrogen is a wonderful buffer though. And when the estrogen levels start to change, other areas of the body are meant to try and take over some of the action that the ovaries would do with regards to the estrogen, but also create some of the precursors, so the building blocks to estrogen, and also production of estrogen, a different form, but estrogen. One of those organs is the adrenal glands, these tiny little glands that sit on top of the kidneys. Our adrenal glands are what I like to call the accelerator of our body. Our thyroid gland is the engine of our body, and the adrenal is the accelerator. In the ideal world, what we would be doing is like with a car that we're driving, we would put the foot on the accelerator and then we'd take the foot off and apply the brake. Then we'd put it on. Sometimes we have to rev the accelerator. Other times we can go in a nice, even pace in the car with the foot lovely on the accelerator, knowing that the brake is there and taking care. Unfortunately, with life, certainly with COVID, the COVID pandemic, with just this pace of life, social media, technology, the list is endless. The adrenal glands, the accelerator, are getting no relief. So the foot is remaining on this accelerator, revving it without much rest. And what's happening to the engine of the car? The engine's getting tired, but the petrol tank is being depleted. As the estrogen levels start to change, our adrenal glands are suddenly thrown into a state of shock because they're suddenly being asked to do a job that they have no petrol, they have no oomph, they have no vitality to do. And what a lot of women then experience is the true state of the exhaustion, the overwhelm, and the stress that's in their body. And they crash. The hot flushes become more intense. Mood starts to drop. Irritability, you name it, lots and lots and lots. Because all of a sudden, we're seeing the accelerator and the stress response part for our body under even greater stress. Fatigue. Suddenly women, their fuses become even shorter. Therefore, stress management is vital. And if there's one thing that we can start to teach even your children, your grandchildren, etc., is how we can start to help the body manage their stress better, so that by the time they start to reach perimenopause and then postmenopause, they're not crashing so badly and that the symptoms are not so devastating. Because I can tell you, absolutely, symptoms can be improved when we help all the parts of the body that have been affected and have had to carry such a load, and all of a sudden they're being asked to do an even bigger job, and they don't have the reserve because the foot is still on the accelerator and the engine is still very, very tired. Then you add in poor diet, you add in liver dysfunction or gut dysfunction, medications, etc., and we have our picture. But what I say again is that all of this can be supported. Let me check to see if there are any questions so far after my, not at the moment, lovely. All right, other symptoms that may be experienced are insomnia. And again, it is not just related to a lowered estrogen level. Often what happens is we start to see, as I said, the true state of a woman's level of fatigue in her body and the imbalance between when she should be awake and when she should be asleep. And it's often reversed. One of our main stress hormones, cortisol, released by the adrenal glands, needing cholesterol as it's one of its bases, gets switched around, and you can feel awake when you should be asleep, and you can feel exhausted when you should be awake. Decreased fertility. However, it is still possible to fall pregnant. So I always like people to remember that contraception is vital if sexually active and you're not wanting to fall pregnant. The challenge is when you do want to fall pregnant and there is the decreased fertility. Mood changes, including a low or swinging mood, irritability, and anxiety. The levels of certain neurotransmitters responsible for mood, so the happy chemicals, may change as estrogen levels fluctuate. And it's, as I've said before, it's not just because the estrogen levels are fluctuating, but also because the areas that are meant to help take over some of that action, they start to suffer more. And if there's any gut problems where neurotransmitters are also produced, that can also impact the situation. Breast tenderness, spikes in hormone levels can affect breast tissue. Fatigue, decreased memory and concentration, and many women do report short-term memory changes and decreased concentration. Decreased libido, vaginal dryness, pain on intercourse, dry skin and changes in skin elasticity and firmness. There is an absolute connection with all of that, and estrogen, of course, as well as urinary tract infections, an increased urge to urinate, and stress urinary incontinence. Now, what we know is that there is an abundance of estrogen receptors in the entire urogenital tract. And with the natural decrease of estrogen, plus any pelvic floor disorders, or just a good old weakened pelvic floor, urinary tract infections may also result, as well as pelvic floor problems also. So pelvic floor exercises are extremely important and should be done throughout our whole life, not just in, when having children or post-labor, but the whole way through, so that we actually keep the whole area as strong and healthy as it possibly can be. Again, all of these symptoms can be supported in many, many ways. The key, though, is that the amount of time it takes to improve depends on each person because of such an intimate connection to stress and also underlying problems in the body. So it varies from woman to woman. There can be a worsening of PMS symptoms because of the fluctuations of both the estrogen and the progesterone. There may be headaches, migraines, or even a worsening of existing migraines, joint and muscle aches. Of course, many women do report abdominal weight gain, and while people do talk about some abdominal weight gain as not being necessarily a bad thing because fat cells can produce hormones, it's how much, how fast, what else is going on, and what's the underlying health of the woman like, because what we don't want is the sudden weight gain that occurs for many females, and that they often find no matter what they do, they can't shift the weight. And that's because there are so many underlying things going on, as well as the fatigue, the stress, inflammation, etc. Hair changes and increased facial hair can occur because there can be increased testosterone, and also there's an increased risk for heart disease, osteoporosis, metabolic syndrome, because estrogen is protective for women and against heart disease and osteoporosis. So again, part of our treatment is helping to minimize the risk of any of these conditions occurring. So as always, I put one of these slides in because we know that both perimenopause and menopause, postmenopause, are so much more than what we just see on the surface. All right, here's my multifactorial diagram that I use in all my presentations, because what is very important for me to know that you understand is that as awful as fatigue is, as awful as the hot flushes and the drenching can be, as awful as the anxiety, irritability, weight gain can be, they are not the problem. They are the symptom. there is so much underneath that is driving the symptoms. And it's that we need to address for long-term support, while at the same time we provide symptom relief. We need to give you symptom relief for the hot flushes. We need to give you symptom relief for some of the fatigue. But we need to also go underneath that and fix and help support to the best of our ability what's not in balance. In other words, we have to help rebalance the blueprint so that your body can find its balance through the transition and onwards. I'll just see what the question is. One moment. I'll come back to that. All right. So there is chronic inflammation and acidity. Now, it's not that this just occurs, the chronic inflammation and the acidity. What we know is that it can worsen, but you will find that there will already be some underlying level of inflammation and acidity in the body. The way I know that, even if your blood results were normal for inflammatory markers like ESR, CRP, is that stress alone creates inflammation. Cortisol, one of our main stress hormones, it creates inflammation in the body as part of its function. Well, it's not a good function, but that's one of the things that it does. And when there's long-term stress and chronic stress, there's going to be long-term chronic inflammation, which can then be triggered into creating a disorder, a disease, a condition. We know that the symptoms of menopause and perimenopause are absolutely affected by inflammation and acidity. It's not about blocking the inflammation and acidity by using medications that just put a lid on it. Yes, there's a place for that in its place. What we want to do, though, is help the body to release the inflammation, to release the acidity, so that the body can start to function much better. An inflamed cell does not operate very well. We also know that women who are overweight or obese can experience more severe perimenopause symptoms. So weight loss is very important to help through the transition, as well as supporting the body not to put on more weight as you go through the transition. We also know that those with pre-existing conditions like autoimmune disease or metabolic syndrome, diabetes, any of those types of pre-existing conditions can absolutely have an effect on how you experience your menopausal symptoms and perimenopausal symptoms, because the body is already under a strain. And when the body is already under a strain, everything is affected. One of the things to say now as well, just so that you know where I'm coming from, is that naturopathically and nutritionally, we look at the body as a complete unit. So with medicine, medicine looks at the body as a system. So endocrine for diabetes, for example, gastrointestinal for gut stuff, etc., etc. what we know and the way that we see it is everything works together. So what's happening in one part of the body will absolutely have an effect in another part of the body. Nothing is in isolation. So therefore, if we support inflammation, for example, in all of you is going to respond. And that will therefore help any of your pre-existing conditions, as well as helping any of your menopausal or perimenopausal symptoms, because nothing is in isolation. What we also know is when you do have a chronic condition, and the way that I look at the body is it tells me that the cells are operating in a way that is different to what we would ideally like. The blueprint has gone a little bit skew. So therefore, if we can help that blueprint as much as possible, that would then help your symptoms. Genetics, we know, absolutely plays a role. And if your mom, your grandmother, etc., experienced severe symptoms, you may as well. I know I also said it can be different, and it can. It all comes down to your underlying health, your emotional health, and even your perception of what it means to be going through perimenopause and menopause. How does it make you feel as a woman? What are your belief systems around going through perimenopause and menopause? Because that emotional and psychological view that you have will 100% affect your symptoms. Again, because every thought and feeling that we have has a physical reaction or response in the body. And I know that at the moment, with the world and society absolutely focused on youth and looking younger and getting Botox, fillers, whatever, and it's every person's choice what they do. My concern, though, is what it's doing to our image of ourselves as women, because going through perimenopause is going to happen, and we need to celebrate it and the wisdom that it brings and support the beauty of the change rather than resent it and feel angry at it, because your body then experiences that and will trigger a flush, will trigger fatigue, will trigger anxiety, etc. Our gut and liver health is also absolutely important for a few reasons. Estrogen is metabolized through the liver, and we want to make sure that the liver is working well to support the metabolism and detoxification of the hormones. And there are particular tests that can be done, urinary tests that can be done to make sure that the liver is doing its job properly, because what we want to make sure that it's going down the correct pathway to protect you rather than being pro-inflammatory, etc. The liver at the same time is doing all the other detoxification work, all the other cleansing work. So it's an organ that works really, really hard, and it can become easily overwhelmed. And when it's overwhelmed and not doing its job properly, able to do its job properly, hormones don't get metabolized correctly, waste builds up, and what do you get? A vicious cycle, inflammation, gut, etc. And of course, our gut is the seat of everything, so that also needs to be healthy. I've already talked quite a bit about the adrenal glands and the thyroid being the engine, and the our whole nervous system as well. They work intimately together. The adrenal glands, the thyroid, and the nervous system. So what we want is we want every part of those systems to be communicating properly and to be supporting each other so that your symptoms are then not as severe as you may be experiencing. We also absolutely 100% know that diet, nutritional deficiencies, and lifestyle, including exercise and smoking, absolutely affect your symptoms and your whole underlying health. And I've already spent a bit of time talking about stress and what that can do to your symptoms and to the whole underlying picture. I hope by taking you through the diagram, I've been able to show you that perimenopause and menopause and the symptoms that you may be experiencing are actually multifactorial, and why it's so essential that we look at you as a whole person, and why you might be doing something but not getting the result that you thought you should be getting or were expecting or hoping, because there might be something underneath that that is still not being addressed. And I'll just make one point again, so please indulge me. I spend a lot of time in practice working with people's emotional health and their psychological health, because as we know, every feeling and every thought has an effect in the body. I've experienced giving clients nutritional supplements, herbal medicines, all sorts of things, lifestyle changes, dietary changes, and we don't get much of a response at all. And I've learned that one of the driving reasons that may not happen, that we may not get the results that we think, well, you know, really, we should have gotten something here, is because the emotional belief, the psychological belief, and the conditioned beliefs around going through these transitions are so powerful that they're blocking the body from actually changing and utilizing the treatment. And what we then have to do is help do the work to help change the belief patterns around what it means to be going through perimenopause and menopause. Whether you go to a psychologist, whether you go to a psychotherapist, you know, there's so many different things that can help us, but it is a vital part of the whole picture of treating somebody struggling with perimenopause and postmenopause. Where's my little clicker? Here we go. So, what is treatment all about? Excuse me, I just need a sip of my water. Thank you. So nutritionally and naturopathically, some of the key aims of treatment are to, of course, provide symptom relief, to decrease any inflammation and acidity as much as possible, to support the natural hormonal changes that are occurring by supporting every part of the biofeedback loop that is involved in hormonal regulation. It's not just one aspect, it's all the aspects. We need to support the engine of our car, which is the thyroid, and support the accelerator of our car, which are the adrenals. We need to support the nervous system and the stress response system. As I always say to my clients, and I've said it many times doing my webinars, it's not about not getting stressed. We know that's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. Stress is a natural part of our life. However, we can absolutely help the body cope with the stress. We can learn techniques to manage the stress. We can do things to short circuit the effect so that you don't fully crash. And we can change behavioral beliefs and belief patterns that are always relentlessly triggering some of the stresses, so that you can not be as affected all the time as you may be at the moment. We also need to support the liver in its hormonal detoxification and elimination processes, and we absolutely have to support the gut in its function. We need to support weight loss, and we also need to remove from the diet and lifestyle as many of the hormonal system toxins as possible. We need to refer for further supportive testing and treatment. For example, blood and functional testing, which could include stool testing, the estrogen metabolite testing, urinary iodine testing. That's a wonderful way to see what's happening with the thyroid, because the thyroid gland is dependent on iodine. Cardiac testing, so that we can start getting baseline levels, especially if there's a family history of cardiac disease, to help decrease the risk for heart disease. Bone density scanning, because we know that without the estrogen, osteoporosis or osteopenia can become more prevalent. Pap smears to look and see what's happening, and of course acupuncture, massage, counseling. The list is endless. What we need to do depends on each woman, on what they're presenting with, what their underlying health is, and what they are needing to be treated. All right, eating for your hormonal health. So please excuse me. Okay, let me look at some questions now. There can be, yes, with the increase in testosterone, it can be more noticeable with the decrease in estrogen. Please advise in more detail what is metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome is a condition that is associated with a few different components to it. So in metabolic syndrome, people may have diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, and obesity. And what happens is it all creates a burden on the body that can then result in further problems for the body. So what we need to be able to do is treat the blood pressure, look after the heart, support the diabetes, weight loss, etc. So it's a umbrella term for a range of conditions that affect the body. Could this inflammation contribute to osteoarthritis of the hips and other joints? Yes, it can. The body does not distinguish inflammation. What I mean by that is that if for any reason the body is suffering from inflammation and it's not dealt with effectively, in other words, it's either suppressed or blocked and not allowed to be resolved effectively for whatever reason, the body can develop further inflammation and it can become a vicious cycle. Stress will absolutely increase it. A poor diet will increase it. And it eventually gets to the stage where the cell no longer knows quite how to function. When there's inflammation in the body, it affects the delivery of nutrition into cells. It affects the removal of waste. The liver has to work harder. The gut, you often find people that are very inflamed have constipation, so they're carrying a lot more waste, which is inflammatory. They may find that they become more stressed more easily, etc. So that inflammation can then start to impact any part of the body. It could trigger into an autoimmune condition. It can worsen or increase the incidence of the osteoarthritis. It can do anything, affect your memory, concentration, anywhere, because it's having an effect. It just is dependent on the person and their own body, where it goes, to which part of the body. Does it go to the joints? Does it go somewhere else? So yes, it can absolutely affect other joints. How do you test for high cortisol and gut inflammation? High cortisol can be tested a few ways. It can be tested through saliva. It can be tested through blood. Generally, for me and naturopathically, we'll often use salivary cortisol testing, but a lot of people do use blood plasma, blood testing for high cortisol. And for gut inflammation, there are a range of different ways that you can test for it. So you can do stool testing. You can do different functional testing as well, which you can always speak to a nutritionist about or an integrative doctor about. And they're different, depending on what's happening, other tests that might be worthwhile considering, not just the cortisol as well. Especially with things like insomnia and depression and a history of depression, because we know that with gut problems, a lot of the neurotransmitters are made in the gut and then go up. Our gut's our second brain, as well as any inflammation in the body as well. The way we help inflammation is by, number one, changing your diet. We absolutely have to help change the diet, which I'll talk as we go through more. We also have to help minimize your exposure to toxins, anything that has an impact on the liver. There are also specific nutritional supplements that you can take and herbal medicines that you can take, like turmeric, for example, to help, and fish oils to help with inflammation. And we have to help the stress and help your body deal with the stress, because that's one of the drivers of your inflammation. Yes, I'll talk more about diet. So the importance of a good diet and lifestyle cannot be overstated. It is actually not complicated which foods need to be avoided and which foods can be enjoyed. The challenge, as I always say, is that we need to remain motivated and compliant, and knowing that it is a long-term dietary and lifestyle change. And as I always say, it is not to be a diet of deprivation, as all that will do is cause stress and no compliance, should be non-compliance. I believe that we can all enjoy a treat every day. The key is what and when. For those of you who've heard me speak before, you would have heard me say, I love chocolate. I love chocolate. I love cake. I love cake. It's the type that I have when I have it, and I also understand why I'm having it and the reason why I'm having it, and I enjoy it without guilt, because it's the guilt that is the killer, because guilt, fear, resentment, anger, etc. that you might have when you're having your treat, that creates stress in the body, cortisol, inflammation. Whereas if you have a treat or a piece of dark chocolate or a piece of good cake and you savor every mouthful, that joy in your body will be dealt with so much more differently than if you're eating it, knowing and saying, I really shouldn't be doing this. I feel so guilty that I'm doing it. Totally different. Some days will be easier than others. There will be times that you fall off the wagon. It is absolutely okay. And all you need to do is remove the guilt, get back on the wagon, and work out why you fell off, and work out strategies that may prevent it in the future. Because I've learned in practice, and even with myself, that most of the time when we're indulging, we are in comfort eating, emotional eating, and wanting to reward ourselves. And if we can work out the triggers behind some of that, we can start the long process. And it's true, it is a long process of changing those patternings so that we don't naturally reach for it just because we're having a bad day. Also, when the body is out of balance, when the adrenal glands are exhausted, when there's nothing left in the tank, what are you going to reach for? Sugar, because it's a quick energy hit, but it's going to go up and then it's going to come crashing down. So we need to help the whole body along the way. So our diet can have a direct influence on many perimenopausal symptoms. To support our body through its hormonal changes and achieve as many of the treatment aims as possible, an anti-inflammatory, phytoestrogen-rich diet is one to enjoy. Much more on phytoestrogen shortly. Therefore, it is ideal to avoid known triggers. For example, hot drinks. Hot drinks can create a flush, especially in a body that is stressed because it's already feeling a little bit of extra heat. You have the hot drink, bam. Spicy foods, caffeine. Caffeine is a stimulant. So for some women, that stimulant of the caffeine can trigger a flush, trigger more anxiety, etc. And absolutely alcohol. Alcohol is sugar. Alcohol is a toxin to the liver. So while up here, you may be thinking, oh my goodness, I just love a glass of wine. It'd really help relax me. Your body, which is actually our guide, is saying, oh no, incoming toxin. I'm not equipped to deal with this right now. And bang, you have your symptoms as well. Large meals can also affect your symptoms because large meals, the body has to work harder to digest them. You may not have good digestive health anyway, and so it's a lot more work. And when we're stressed, our digestive secretions slow down. The go nervous system is in control instead of the nice, relaxed nervous system that we ideally want for good digestion. You don't always chew properly when you're stressed. So you're eating a big meal, not chewing it adequately. It's going into a tummy that's tight with not as much digestive secretions, and your body just goes into stress. So portion control is essential. Trying to eat when you're relaxed and chewing properly is essential. And looking at different ways to eat when you are stressed is absolutely essential as well. And even using things like apple cider vinegar or some bitter foods like rocket in a salad or lemon to stimulate the digestive secretions to help your body digest the food. Gluten. Gluten, which is a protein found in wheat, rye, and barley, and through cross-contamination in oats, you can buy certified gluten-free oats. Gluten can be a toxin for most people. And when we're trying to help the body, avoiding as many toxins as possible is ideal. Certainly looking at avoiding wheat. Wheat irritates the gut, pure and simple. It irritates the gut. It's very sticky. It causes the body to hold on to fluid. It's very mucus forming. It affects the immune system, etc. So certainly stopping wheat, if you can't stop rye and barley, is something very important to consider. Sugar. Sugar is labelled many ways in food items. Watch out for things like corn syrup, fructose, sucrose, glucose, maltose. For example, anything ending in OSE, even agave, which I didn't write on there, but agave as well, in ingredient lists, because at the end of the day, they're all sugars. Agave is a different type of sugar, but too much agave is not good either. Now, when we start working with changing the diet, what is really important to understand is we need to be gentle with ourselves, and we need to remove judgment as much as possible. In a body that is overwhelmed, fatigued, inflamed, and stressed, telling you to stop sugar just is not going to cut the mustard, so to speak. It's just not going to happen. I'll never see you again. Another naturopath will never see you again. It's crazy, because you already know you shouldn't be doing it, but you're emotionally attached to it and you're physically addicted to it. Your body is addicted to it. So what we do is we start to decrease and we start to use alternatives. So 2 sugars in coffee could become 1 sugar. That's already a win. Changing from maple syrup to rice syrup, or from sugar to rice syrup, that's already a win. While at the same time, we help support you nutritionally with supplements or herbs, whatever, to help break the imbalance in your body, which will then make coming off the sugar that much better. If you can't stop the alcohol, we halve it initially. You know, we have to be realistic, and it's what each person can do. Some people can do the whole thing. Some people can only do 1 change, but 1 change is a start. As you start to feel different, it motivates you to do the next change. We're human, and everybody is different. One thing to do chuck out though, if you can, is your artificial sweeteners. They are toxic, capital letters, underlined, to the liver. And your liver is already under great stress. Things like xylitol, stevia, no problem. I would rather you have a teaspoon of white sugar, even though I prefer you didn't, but I would rather you do that than have an artificial sweetener. Processed and pre-packaged foods, they all contain too much sugar and not great salt. Salt is important, but proper sea salt, where it's got all the minerals, not just regular table salt that's had everything else stripped from it. Large amounts of red meat and fried food, pure inflammation right there, and fried foods are cooked in terrible oils. Even if the oil says cholesterol free, I don't worry about that. What I do worry about is the vegetable oil, the sunflower oil that they're using that has all the other nasties that we don't want. And red meat is just pure inflammation right there. It's not about not having red meat, but it's not having it every day. And it's the type you have, for example, that makes the difference. So I don't recommend people having huge steaks. Steak is very difficult for most people to digest, especially if you've got reflux problems and all those types of things. We need to help your body digest the food better. So, you know, having some lamb, for example, once a week, maybe twice a week. If you've got iron problems, we can give you iron in other ways. It's not necessarily about having to have the red meat. Refined white carbohydrates, anything white, and cow's dairy. Calcium can absolutely come from other sources. The amount of calcium you absorb from cow's milk is not as high as what is reported. Margarine and other hydrogenated fats, they are just inflammation right there. And then, as I've said before, the corn, peanut, sunflower, safflower, soya oils, they all contain those omega-6 fatty acids, which we know should only be eaten in small amounts, and 100% genetically modified soy. Now, soy is very beneficial for many women with perimenopausal and menopausal symptoms because it's phytoestrogenic. But we need it to be good soy, not genetically modified. So I generally say to women, organic soy. You can buy it in the health food store, of course, but you can buy it in most supermarkets. So you don't have to be paying large amounts of money. But a product that's been genetically modified is not in its natural state, and we need it to be in its natural state. All right, let me check any questions. Oops, sorry, there we go. It's not coming up, never mind. There we go. All right. No problem. All right. I practice in Randwick. At the moment, I'm doing a lot of my practicing on Zoom and on FaceTime because of COVID. So I physically practice in Randwick or Coogee, but I do things on Zoom, no problem. Okay. So eating for your hormonal health. What are our general guidelines? Our general guidelines are to enjoy a general whole foods diet, high in vegetables, whole grains, except for wheat or gluten, nuts, seeds, and legumes, with good amounts of protein and healthy fats and small amounts of fruit. I'm going to just target that small amount of fruit first. We all know that fruit is delicious. What we also know, though, is fruit is sugar. Yes, there is other nutrition in fruit. Many people, though, eat way too much fruit, and it's a sugar. And if you have chronic conditions, autoimmune conditions, even hormonal conditions, decreasing sugar is paramount, and that means decreasing your amount of fruit. I generally say to people, if they are willing to stop fruit for an initial 4 weeks, outstanding. If not, we minimize the fruit and you only have it in the morning, especially if you've got digestive issues, because our digestion naturally slows through the day. And if you're eating fruit in the afternoon, and if you're eating fruit at night after dinner, hello bloating, hello constipation, hello wind, hello discomfort. It's fermenting and it can be exacerbating your symptoms. Ideal fruits to enjoy are things like berries, fresh or frozen, doesn't matter. No oranges, too acidic. You can have apples or pears unless you're on FODMAPs, and then you can't have apples. Banana, unless you have real mucus problems, bananas can be great. But if you are someone who suffers from sinus, for example, bananas are very mucus forming. So I generally advise no. Pawpaw, papaya, delicious, enjoy. that it comes down to how much and when. We absolutely need protein, particularly as we get older. It's as important as when we are younger, because we need protein for healthy muscles, and we need healthy muscles to stabilize our bone health and our joint health. So protein is essential. It's how we always get the protein. It doesn't all have to come from red meat. Chicken, fish, nuts, seeds, tofus, protein powders, etc., etc. Healthy fats are also absolutely essential. We need healthy fat to support every cell in our body, our hair, our skin. We have to oil the body, but we need to oil it correctly. Avocado, olive oil, coconut oil, nuts, all the different seeds, hemp seeds, sunflower seeds, chia seeds, you name it. There's so many seeds we can have that are healthy fats. If you're having a breakfast, for example, and you're having some eggs, add a bit of avocado to that, for example. Having a salad, add some avocado, an olive oil dressing, throw over some nuts or seeds. It's not hard and you don't need much because we know they're high calorie. But if you don't have them and you cut out your fats, you will absolutely start noticing dry skin, dry hair. You may start to feel cold. Even though you're hot, you may feel cold because you're not getting enough oiling and enough insulation support. Vegetables, vegetables, vegetables. Vegetables are alkalizing. Protein is acid. There are some proteins that have a better alkaline profile, but mostly I look at protein as acid, and I look at vegetables and lemon and lime, not oranges, as alkalizing. And we want them. Green vegetables to your heart's content. The only vegetable I advise people not to eat is corn. I know people love corn. We don't generally have the enzymes to digest corn, and corn is very irritating to the gut lining. And if you check your poop, your stools, you'll often find the corn right there because you haven't actually digested it. You may have enjoyed the taste, but your body might not like it. So I generally advise people to avoid corn. And then, of course, if you've got osteoarthritis, you're looking at avoiding tomatoes and other nightshades potentially. If you've got other conditions, you're looking at avoiding tomatoes and other things. You know, it's all very individualized depending on what's happening in your body. But as a general view, these are what we're looking for. Phytoestrogen-rich foods. Most plant foods contain beneficial compounds known as phytoestrogens. When broken down in the body, they have a weak estrogen-like effect, which may reduce symptoms like hot flushes and vaginal dryness, and offer support in decreasing the risk of osteoporosis, cancer, and heart disease. They are abundant in soya products like tofu, tempeh, miso, that you can combine with soya sauce. And I've got there tamari. So tamari is the gluten-free soya sauce, because most general like Kikkoman and those brands, they have wheat added to their product. Tamari, which is generally in the health food section of the supermarket, or you may find other gluten-free brands of tamari, of soy sauce with all the other soya sauces, doesn't have wheat, and it's totally fine, totally delicious. They're also abundant in legumes, flax seeds, sprouts, such as alfalfa and broccoli, bean shoots, nuts, clover, and whole grains. And I've listed there things that I've already spoken about, like the deep green vegetables, the red and yellow vegetables, the cold water fish for the healthy fats, and the omega-3s. the healthy fats there as well. The nuts and seeds, including almonds, walnuts, pumpkin, hemp, flax, sunflower, and chia seeds. Extremely important. Please maintain your water intake. A dehydrated body will not function well. Inflammation, stress, any chronic condition that you may have, I can tell you, leads to dehydration and exacerbates it. However, you may be thinking to yourself, well, I actually already drink a lot of water. My question to you is, do you urinate a lot? Do you go wee-wee a lot? And you may be thinking to yourself, actually, I do. The reason for that is that the water is literally going in one end and straight out the other and bypassing your cells. Because water on its own is actually very difficult for an inflamed, overwhelmed cell to absorb. It's very difficult to pull it across into the cell. We need to help the cell absorb the water. For example, lemon in some warm water, first thing in the morning. That'll be fantastic. You can add a bit of lemon or lime to a bottle of water and sip it. That's fine too. Just don't brush your teeth. 30 minutes around lemon because lemon softens enamel. Apple cider vinegar in water can help. A tiny pinch of sea salt in water will help if you're allowed to have that. Magnesium in water will help. There are so many ways that we can help your body start to absorb water. An electrolyte powder, a good quality one, will help your cells pull the water into the cell and stop being so dehydrated. And what you'll start to notice is, one, you won't wee as much because your cells are starting to absorb water, and you won't feel as fluidy, as boggy, because the water at the moment, what's not being urinated out, is going into your tissues and you're feeling fluidy. It certainly isn't necessarily going into your cells as much as we want. So you may find you're dry all the time, your lips are dry, your mouth's dry, because you're dehydrated. I recommend as much as possible, and I know it's not possible for everybody, that's okay, to buy only organic tamari, tofu, eggs and chicken if you can. And what I've listed there as well is that these foods that I've listed there are what we call the dirty dozen, the ones that have had the most pesticides on them. And if possible, you buy those as organic as possible or as least as possible, because the more we can decrease the toxic load on the body, the better. For some women that I work with, we have to go as far as changing everything from shampoos, conditioners, makeup, cleaning products, moisturizers, nail polishes, to minimize the burden of toxins that are impacting their hormonal health. So every woman is different. Some need to go more drastic than others. As much chemical free is good anyway, but for some it's absolutely essential. Some tips. Let me check the time. Okay. On waking, a quarter of a lemon to half to 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar is a lovely way to start your day because it flushes out your system. We detox at night while we're sleeping, which is why sleep is so important. So important. And if you're not sleeping, you're not detoxing. And when we have the lemon or the apple cider vinegar in the warm water, it flushes out the kidneys, flushes the body, gets you revved up. The ideal time to enjoy your coffee is at morning tea time, not first thing in the morning in order to get you going, because that is a artificial kickstart to your fatigued body, and your adrenal glands, your stress response system are going to just cry. And you've given it this hit, but underneath it, it's very tired. For weight loss, it can also make weight loss in many people more difficult because of the end result. So generally, morning tea time is better. And make each meal a combination of protein, carbohydrate, primarily from vegetables, and healthy fats. If you experience slumps in your energy around 3 p.m. in the afternoon, consider having a protein-based snack around 2:30 to 2:45 to prevent the slump from occurring. Once the slump's occurred, your body's in crisis. It's already gone too far. We want to actually prevent that and support your system. Ensure that you drink 6 to 8 glasses of water a day, and I've added there what I've mentioned. Enjoy some dark chocolate, 70% or higher in the evening with a relaxing herbal tea, delicious, and other specific teas and foods. Sage tea may assist with hot flushes and sweating. It is also an antioxidant and may assist in the treatment of anxiety, and it can also support brain function. So you could go and buy some sage tea and have a few cups a day and see what you notice. Red clover tea may assist with hot flushes and sweating and vaginal dryness, and it may also support healthy lipid levels. Good old fennel, beautiful fennel, add it to your salads. May assist with hot flushes and sweating, anxiety and vaginal dryness, and it also supports digestion. And of course, alfalfa sprouts and alfalfa tea may assist with hot flushes and sweating. It is also an antioxidant, a tonic, a detoxifier. It protects the liver, and it also supports blood sugar regulation and heart health. Let me look at questions before I go on. I know I've gone a bit, it's 1:15, so I understand if you need to go. Wrong way. There we go. I just wanted to see what questions have come through. Takes me a moment for it to come up. All right. Exercise is essential. No, wrong way. Regular exercise can help improve mood, support weight management, and assist in the treatment of hot flushes. It is also essential for the prevention and treatment of osteoporosis and support for heart health. The key is the type and the duration, the intensity, and depending on your general health and current state of health. So you might need to talk to a personal trainer, an exercise physiologist, etc., so that you have the correct program for you. If you are a smoker, stopping smoking is crucial. One, it affects the hormones and it actually hastens follicular depletion. So for those that are wanting to fall pregnant for fertility, smoking can actually be a contributing factor to infertility. Good sleep hygiene and adequate sleep is essential for hormonal health. Our bodies repair while we are asleep. And as I've already said before, stress management is essential. We know that it is ridiculous to say don't stress. But what we do know is that we can help our body to cope with stress, and we can learn techniques to decrease the effect of stress, shorten the duration, and help our body recover from stress. Meditation, mindfulness, yoga, Tai Chi can all assist with stress management. Sexual health, pelvic floor exercises, yoga or Tai Chi are some of the ways we can, let me grab the questions before I lose them again. are some of the ways we can encourage circulation and tone in the genital area through the pelvic floor. Using water-based lubricants may also help. Okay, so let me look at a talk on gut health would be helpful. More than happy to organise that. I can talk to Dunera as well. Tomatoes and oranges, acid would be changed on absorption, wouldn't it? No. No. Tomatoes and oranges are pure, are acid or acidic. They do not change on absorption at all. So they actually target, and as an acid, one of their favorite targets is the joints. So there are other fruits that are more alkaline that we want for the anti-inflammatory effect. But tomatoes and oranges are acidic, and they can worsen reflux, for example, as well as pain in the joints and pain in other parts of the body. Is it all right to eat whole eggs every day? It is absolutely all right to eat whole eggs every day. It is absolutely all right. You're welcome. All right, nuts are high energy. How much nuts before they become fattening? The key with nuts is to chew them properly, because yes, nuts are high calorie, high energy. I generally say about 8 to 12 nuts in one serve. The key though is if you chew them properly, you will allow the oils, you will allow the nutrition of the nut to do its job and give you a feeling of satisfaction. People who just do a couple of chomps and swallow, they're not getting the same satiety effect as if you chew them properly. Super, super, super important. Monk fruit sweetener is okay. Yes, you can use monk fruit sweetener as well. My mobile number is on the, I don't know if you can see my mobile number. My email address is Brenda at, BRENDA at BrendaRosenfeld.com. You're also welcome to text me with any other questions that you have. In my clinical experience, unless the underlying issues are addressed and treated, you may not experience as much long-term benefit as you potentially can from treatment. As each person experiences their symptoms and conditions differently, there is no one solution for everyone. What works for one may not work for another. We are all unique. The reasons you are experiencing your current symptoms and conditions are often many and usually interrelated. Nothing happens, please know this, nothing happens in isolation. How much coffee is too much? Well, my ideal would be 1 a day. All my clients, everyone that I work with, all know that they can have 1 coffee a day. Some people do have 2. However, when I start working with some people, especially some of my corporate clients, having 12 coffees a day is not unusual. So going from 12 to 10 to 8 to 6 to 4 over time, those are all wins. So it depends, but my ideal is just 1 coffee a day, morning tea time, and really, really enjoy it. In the afternoon, I prefer people to have things like water with magnesium or a herbal tea or something like that, because it's often a time when you've been working through the day, you've been busy, you may not have had enough to drink, and people are often reaching for the caffeine for the kick. to give them energy, but your body's actually dehydrated and electrolyte low. And if we can support that, it'll actually be better for you. Decaf can be okay, but it needs to be a good brand so that you know that the decaffeination process has been a good one rather than an unhealthy one. Some books on menopause, diet and inflammation. I'm not able to do that through these webinars, but you're welcome to contact me separately and I can. Okay. Natural therapies, some points to take away. Natural therapies, including diet, supplements, and herbal medicines, may offer treatment strategies to support you and can work alongside your medications. Please know that when you go see a practitioner, that everything that you're given is okay to take alongside your medications. And in many cases, they can actually help your medications work even better. However, diet and lifestyle are crucial. Your hormonal health cannot be supported by supplements or medications alone. Diet, lifestyle, emotional health are essential, and compliance is important. However, as we say, even making one change can be enough, and you don't have to wait a long time to start to notice a difference. However, when you take a medication, you often find that you get quite an instant result. When you take a herbal supplement or a nutritional supplement, it can take a bit longer to kick in. So what you may notice is, say your hot flushes, you rate them as a 10 out of 10. 1 week later, it might be 9 out of 10. 2 weeks later, it might still be 9 out of 10. 3 weeks later, it might be 7 out of 10. 4 weeks later, it might be 5 out of 10. It might be more, but what we need to be aware of is that we're not just helping the symptom, we're helping the underlying driver. So we're not just suppressing something and trying to help the symptom. We're actually trying to help all of you. So therefore, we're looking for a change. And part of working with natural therapies is in understanding that. So when you don't get the automatic fix that you're looking for, it doesn't mean that things aren't changing inside your body. It might be that it was so depleted, it needs to reach a particular point before you notice a clear change. So that's why a 10% improvement is something to celebrate, not to feel angry or upset about, because it works differently. And also to just say that the information, as always today, is for educational purposes only, and please consult with your own healthcare practitioner, whoever they may be, for a comprehensive assessment and treatment regime that is tailored to your individual requirements. I've thoroughly enjoyed my talk with you today. Oh, what happened there? Hold on a moment. From the beginning, I want to see if I can get those last questions. Where's my thing to come up? Sometimes it comes up and then I lose it and I don't know why. Never mind. Thank you so much for being with me today. I know we've gone quite long today, an hour, almost an hour and a half. When I'm on a roll, I just can't stop myself. So thank you for being with me. Please contact me with any questions and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.